Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means New Comic Book Day, when shambling swamp nerds emerge from their parents' rumpus room and head to their LCS, their local comic shop, where they stand mouth-breathing in front of all the new releases so that ordinary customers have to squeeze past them to buy things. and I guess it's time for me to admit that I'm going to be one of those ordinary customers. I have been flirting with buying weekly issues after years of not doing it, after years of only buying graphic novels and collections and whatnot. I've been flirting with buying weekly issues, and I guess a part of me has just been wondering if the issues would be good enough to keep me hooked. And they have been. So I am, I guess, now buying weekly issues of comic books. I didn't see it coming. I will still buy collections and graphic novels and whatnot, although there hasn't been anything recently to attract my interest. But in the meantime, I myself went to my LCS and went to the new release rack. I also went to the counter to pay when I was done, and I thought, if I'm going to be coming here every week, then I should maybe make a pull list. I should maybe sign up. A lot of comic book stores, most of them, in fact, have some sort of service where if in exchange for you giving them your regular business, they will set aside titles that you call for so that you will, instead of needing to go to the new release rack, although everybody does anyway, you could just go to the counter and say your name, and they would consult your pull list and give you your stack of comics for that week. There can be advantages. Some shops will discount for their subscribers the total. They'll give you a small discount on the total. Another advantage is that if it's on your pull list, you'll get it, as opposed to it going onto the shelf and maybe selling out and you missing it or anything like that. And I went to the counter thinking, it might be time for me to inquire from, there was a young man. He was draped entirely over the counter. He was at a 90-degree angle. There was his legs, and then his entire upper body was laying on the counter. I guess he was really tired. And he had green hair, and he had big brass rings through one of his eyebrows, and two of his nostrils. And he didn't seem to notice me. I walked up to the counter, and he just sort of sat there, or laid there, or beached there, or whatever. And I am accustomed in the 21st century to absolutely crappy customer service. I'm accustomed to it. I expect it now, so I don't get all huffy or anything. But one thing that I absolutely will not concede to crappy customer service is that I insist on being acknowledged that I'm physically there. And I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait well into the range of the silence and the waiting being incredibly awkward. And it was. I walked up to the counter. There was no one else there but him. He was draped on the counter. He was looking right at me, and I simply stood there. We were looking at each other, and I simply stood there. Because if he's just going to stare at me without acknowledging that someone is standing right in front of him, much less a customer with product in hand, I'm not going to help him. And I didn't. And I swear, by Crom and Mitra, that probably a full 90 seconds went by. Now, that doesn't sound like a long time, but imagine staring at someone for 90 seconds without anything being said. When, in retail, in the normal world, in the normal world that we left behind quite some time ago, the instantaneous thing that you on the other side of that counter are supposed to say are, "Can I help you?" Can I help you? That's not supposed to take 90 seconds. That's not supposed to take 30 seconds. That's supposed to happen instantaneously. You see a customer and you say, "Can I help you?" This kid didn't. He waited that 30 seconds. He waited 60 seconds. He waited 90 seconds. And then finally, resentfully, he said, "Can I help you?" He was clearly upset that I was simply standing there. But that's all I want. I'm not going to gloat. I'm not going to ask to see a manager. I'm not going to slam things or anything like that. Instead, I was perfectly cheerful. He wasn't, but courtesy is its own reward. As friends of mine used to say in Morocco, courtesy is its own reward. Once he acknowledged my physical existence, then I simply went ahead with business with a smile on my face. And I would have asked him about the store's subscription policy. I would have done that. But in addition to him being a surly sack of crap, there was also the in-store music, which was playing so loud that in order to ask him about the store subscription service, I would have had to yell. No exaggeration. I would have had to shout for him to hear me over the store's music. So instead, I just didn't do it. I had the combination of those two things, the fact that he obviously didn't want me to be there, and the fact that I would have had to shout in order to ask a question, disinclined me to do anything except pay and leave. And as I was walking out, I thought, well, there's another comic shop that's not that far off my route. It wouldn't be an inconvenience at all. And that situation where customer X, through no fault of their own, without expecting to at all, has been, by your actions, so completely disinclined to go back to your shop that they will go to the shop that's a block away, that is why comic stores close. So I don't mean to provide this sack of crap or anybody else with a civics lesson, but nevertheless, that's the simple truth. I do not walk around in the adult world with money to spend in my pocket willing to be insulted. I do not do that. I am willing, perfectly fine, to be treated like just a cog. If I'm in a long line at a Barnes & Noble or a cafe or whatever, I expect that someone will simply work right through me. I'm just another thing. I'm just another integer in that line. But I do not expect to be insulted. And I won't go back if I am. So one way or another, my LCS story may have to change in the next week. But in terms of comics, I only bought two things. I saw a bunch of stuff, but I only bought two things. There were only two things that weren't. All of Marvel comics are off limits anyway, because they're all so weird and strange. And poor, the ones that I've read recently, are mostly poor. But it turned out this week that all of the DC comics almost were off limits too, because they were all team-ups of established DC characters like Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman with cartoon characters that I half of them I didn't even recognize. It's obviously some sort of marketing thing. But I wasn't about to get a team-up between between Batman and Magilla Gorilla. I wasn't about to do anything like that. So I only got two issues, and the two issues have a lot in common. They are both big signpost issues in big event storylines. I've mentioned on Comics Wednesday a few times that comic book companies, Marvel and DC, are in love with big event storylines. They absolutely love them. And that can be intimidating, especially when you're just returning to weekly comics, as I am, because if you don't get into the middle of such an event, you probably won't be able to make head or tail out of it. And also, I mean, both companies indulge shamelessly in spin-off issues that they want you to buy, so that it's not just the central storyline. It's something important might happen over two comics over in a title that you would otherwise never buy, but it's an important plot point, so you have to get it. It's a devious way to do things, and I don't do it. I don't fall for it at all. With the result that I'm sure there are things in both of these issues that I missed. We've seen both of them on this channel before. The first one is a standalone issue of The Witching Hour. This is Justice League Dark, a vaguely supernatural iteration of the Justice League, and Wonder Woman, the combination of the two of them. Justice League Dark, at least in these issues that I've been reading, is composed of some supernatural characters like Zatanna, the Justice League member, a magician who speaks her spells backwards, or John Constantine, a trenchcoat-wearing Englishman who traffics in the macabre, or Deadman, the acrobat Boston Brand, who was murdered and then came back as a ghost with the ability to possess a body and get it to do what he wants. But also a couple of mystical characters. The chimp detective, Man-Bat, from the Batman books, that, as far as I know, have never been retconned to be anything supernatural, but one way or another. You've got that League and Wonder Woman. And the storyline here involves the goddess of witchcraft. Hecate is how I pronounce it, because I've been steeped up to my eyeballs in Shakespeare. But it turns out that she is not just one of a pantheon of gods. She, it turns out in this issue, is some sort of demiurge, the most powerful god of them all. And in a way, the progenitor of all other gods. This issue has an enormous amount to do with magic in the DC universe, with how magic is conceived. There were parts of it, of course, that didn't sit well with Steve, like when the other, sort of split personalities of the goddess Hecate just flat out say that magic is the soul of the universe, that it was the beginning of all things in the universe, it's the source of all things in the universe, when actually, I mean, I read the issue and I think, okay, well, I know where you're coming from. You're writing a huge magic storyline, so of course I know where you're coming from, but nevertheless, what about a kid reading this? There's no such thing as magic. And would if you were having a comparable gigantic epic over in Green Lantern, would the Green Lantern say that magic is the source of everything? I'd hope not. It's kind of weird. I mean, magic, the source of Wonder Woman, sure, she's an enchanted being, the source of Zatanna's power, sure, but magic is not the source of Superman, or the technology that got him from the planet Krypton to the planet Earth. At least I hope not. But one way or another. As we saw in previous episodes, of Comic Book Wednesday, the goddess Hecate has revived and wants to take over the magic of the whole world, and is destructive. This aspect of her is destructive, and she has split apart various aspects of her magic and imbued them in living beings all over the world. 5 of them, and in an earlier issue of the Witching Hour story, which concludes in this issue, Wonder Woman takes on a sliver of that magic, figuring that she is super powerful and could therefore resist it, and her body would be able to withstand the strain, and that maybe once she had that power, she could confront Hecate directly, either to defeat her or to get her to change her mind about causing this upheaval in the world of magic. And longtime comic book fans will know exactly how a plan like that turns out. It goes wrong. Well, the Wonder Woman's body becomes possessed. Her soul is off in another reality, but her body is, the energy eyes and the wild hair, and is wreaking havoc everywhere. And Justice League Dark has to figure out what to do about that, and they're holding back until Circe of the Odyssey fame, only here with a very short haircut and a suit coat and whatnot, lays out the law for them, tells them, look, there's no way to do, we have Hecate's magic being channeled through Wonder Woman's body, and she's winning, and she's more powerful than any of you. She's more powerful than anybody, and we know what she wants for the Earth, and there's a clear choice here. She actually says at one point, it's fairly good writing, although I have to say, it's fairly good writing, but boy, oh boy, is there a lot of talk in this issue, when you'd think that it being the finale of a big major event, there'd be a lot more that happens. Instead, there are pages and pages that go by here where characters simply talk. It's fairly well written, but it's not quite the bang for your buck that you're expecting at the conclusion of an epic storyline. One of my bugbears about epic storylines like this is that writers make the most of their dramatic potential in the early chapters, because they know that they're just going to rest on exposition in the end chapters. That happened most famously in Batman just a few years ago, with A Death in the Family, a storyline where the Joker returns, and it builds up to a finale that is very clearly forecast. And the whole time in the individual issues bending up to it, I was thinking, this is thrilling. And the whole time I was thinking, okay, this is really thrilling, but the end conclusion of this storyline is obvious, and you don't have the guts to do it. And sure enough, the writer didn't have the guts to do it. And it feels like a bit of a letdown when a writer indulges in that much drama only to have it fail at the end. So the fact that it's such a talky issue bothered me a little. But at one point, Circe tells them, you're going to have to kill Diana. You're going to have to kill Wonder Woman. And Zatanna says, you can't be serious. And she says, it's Wonder Woman or magic. And if you pick Wonder Woman, you're all going to die, including her. So stop pretending it's a choice. She tells them, horrors await. Be sure of that. Hecate is not going to make this easy, but all of that power is trapped inside Diana right now. The right killing blow would go off like an atomic bomb of magic. That has the potential to end Hecate's existence. There's no other option. You need to choose the darkest path, because it's the only way, it's the only one with a light at the end of it. And then she gets off a great zinger as she walks away. She says, if you really need the kick in the behind, ask yourself the insipid question I've seen on a t-shirt or two. What would Wonder Woman do? And there is a big conclusion, and also a bit of an anticlimax, because it turns out at the end, you know, when the whole problem of Hecate has been dealt with one way or another, it turns out that not all of those shards of her power are accounted for. So we're going, one story ends, but the same kind of story is still open for another writer to do, or even this writer to do. This is, I forgot to mention, I'm still getting used to this whole comic book thing. This is written by James Tynion IV, and it is drawn by Jesus Marino, Fernando Blanco, and Miguel Mendonça. So 3 different styles here. They mesh fairly well. I didn't really notice. You can tell a little from page to page. And some of the page designs are amazing. There's one page where Wonder Woman is conferring with the various aspects of Hecate's personality. Look at that. Look at this. This is just beautiful comic book art. Ignore the words for a minute. Look at that. That is just lovely. But anyway, that was the end of Witching Hour. At the end of Witching Hour, the subject of magic in the DC Universe is still fairly unsettled. But at least the big confrontation with Hecate is over. So I missed, a couple of chapters of this, but I liked what I read. It's great. It's great to touch base with these 4-star legendary superhero characters that I have read forever. I've read Wonder Woman in one kind or another forever. Same thing is true with the next one. This is Justice League and Aquaman. This is a big storyline that we've seen already. This is Drowned Earth. Only this is a standalone issue, not an issue of Aquaman or Justice League. And the storyline here is that the Greek god Poseidon, the god of the ocean, is missing and presumed dead. But when he was alive, apparently he was up to a lot more than simply ruling the ocean. He was also at war with a lot of ocean gods from other worlds, who are now seeking their vengeance. Now that Poseidon is gone, they're seeking their vengeance by trying to conquer the Earth. They've put a fleet of spaceships in orbit over the planet, and they've also unleashed a red tide all over the planet that, when it touches people, turns them into monsters. And that is going to drown the Earth. They took the precaution first of kidnapping Aquaman. They haven't killed him. They have him in their own extra-dimensional headquarters. But all the rest of the world, the Justice League, the Teen Titans, all of the Justice League Reserve members, Aquaman's wife and queen, Mera, they all have to deal with this invasion, which is so big, so epic, and so happening on so many fronts that it really does feel convincing that the Justice League is outmatched. That part it's a very big story, and I like that. I like that a lot. You have to sort of suspend your disbelief just a bit because, of course, this is also magic. And also, Poseidon is one of the Greek gods that Hecate talks about in that issue of Wonder Woman. So these stories are intimately connected. You just have to assume that one takes place either before or after the other. That's no problem. But there's a lot of talk in this issue as well. There's a lot of action, so I didn't mind quite so much. But there's a lot of talk here that's clearly aiming towards redefining what Aquaman's power set is. There's one point when his oneness with the ocean, whatever it is taken away from him by one of these aliens, ocean gods. We need to draw out the true power of the life energy imbued in you by the ocean itself. She draws it out of him, and she imparts it in his arch nemesis, Black Manta. And Aquaman is shriveled, and he says, "I can't feel it. I can't hear the ocean anymore." And Black Manta is jubilant and says, This is how you felt all the time? You had this much power and you used it to speak to fish? And I don't know quite what that means. It's a little defined in this issue, but I think it's clear that if that much power, quote unquote, goes back to Aquaman at the end of this story, we will be dealing with a different hero. A Superman and Wonder Woman level hero. I'd be interested in seeing how that goes. Anything in the world with this character is preferable to me. You can do anything you want, provided you don't cut off one of his hands. You can do anything you want other than that. So I'd be curious to see how it all goes. The thing I liked most about this issue, in addition to the artwork, I should give you the rundown, yes? problem with these issues is you have to go sometimes a mile in before you get the credits. Yeah, there we go. This is also written by James Tynion IV, and it's drawn by Howard Porter. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you really how beautiful the artwork is, how wonderful it is in an odd kind of clunky way. I don't know if yeah, okay, look at this panel there. That is Aquaman in the stronghold of his enemies, and he is seeing what's going on the Earth, and the images that he's seeing are outlined by fish, alien fish, and just wreathing patterns like that. I was tremendously impressed by the artwork, and the thing that I liked most about this issue is that it really does a convincing job of making our heroes feel like they're completely outmatched, which is tough to do when you've got Superman and Wonder Woman and Green Lanterns, however many Green Lanterns on the team. That's tough to do. And it works really well here. I had a couple of quibbles, of course. I had a couple of quibbles. I mean, one of them is not a quibble because the thing that bugged me about this issue is how utterly useless Aquaman is throughout the length of it. But clearly this is being set up for a major, comeback by him in the course of the Drowned Earth storyline. He's clearly going to be the hero and the main figure, so he has to be brought low first. Another quibble that I had with James Tynion IV is that I don't quite know how to stress this, but you don't really go to Alpha Centauri to find an ocean god other than Poseidon. I mean, if Poseidon was a royal SOB, it seems likely to me that the first people he would have cheesed off would have been the 1,000 other ocean gods that Earth has. It almost seems, and I'm sure it's not true, but it almost seems in reading this issue like this author thinks that Poseidon was the only sea god the world's ever had, when he was the 1,000th. Conservatively speaking, and there were 1,000 after him. So, that was a little bit of a bugaboo. Is that not only did it seem like these aliens were coming a long way out of their way, but also their motivation seems a little strange to me. Why on earth would they come all this distance in order to drown one planet? And why would they need to, if they're gods? To me, they seem like super powerful aliens. And I think it's pretty clear that in the course of Drowned Earth, Poseidon will turn out to be alive and will make a big return. In fact, I wouldn't put it past our author to go for a literal Deus Ex Machina, something straight out of Euripides, and have Poseidon save the day. Maybe have our heroes be completely outclassed and need the intervention of a god. One way or another, I am on board with Drowned Earth. I'm done with Witching Hour. And we'll see what the next event that involves Justice League Dark or Wonder Woman or anything like that. But I'm on board with Drowned Earth. I want to see how this story progresses. It seems hopeless. There's one point in this issue where the Flash says to Batman, how on earth can we beat these things? And he says it in a way that makes you think he doesn't think we can, that's kind of fun. One ominous sign that I saw when flipping through this issue has lots and lots of house ads for upcoming DC products. And there's one thing I noticed. I don't know how up all of you are on the comic book world. Probably those of you who are watching my comic book videos will know a little bit more about it than the ordinary reader or viewer. But there's a thing that I noticed on a couple of different pages here, a couple of different house ads. One is for Aquaman himself, a new storyline of Aquaman himself. With the teaser, he lost his memory, he's lost his kingdom. Can he find the hero within? And the thing that bothers me is that it's written by Kelly Sue DeConnick. And you might not know that name. I wouldn't probably have known that name myself if not for the last 2 years. But then I no sooner tuned 2 pages than I got a new storyline of Wonder Woman, which is going to have artwork by the great Carrie Nord. That's going to be amazing to watch. I'd be willing to bet Carrie Nord is one of those artists who grows every time. Every new project is a new artist, a better, significantly better artist. So I can't wait to see that. But the author is G. Willow Wilson, who is another name that will strike an ominous note if you have been following comic books, because those two authors have had a field day with desecrating key Marvel Comics characters, not just changing their identities or changing their portrayals, but also changing their ideology. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen in DC Comics. Marvel Comics right now is just an absolute seething mess of political signaling and political counter signaling. It's almost like the comic stories themselves are beside the point. It seems to the writers that and to the artists that Marvel Comics is mainly for, I don't know, that it's an adjunct to their Twitter accounts. And I don't want that to happen with DC. I don't like that whenever I see it, not because of ideology or politics, but because it ends up making bad stories. It ends up making boring stories. And it's incredibly frustrating for somebody who's, 45 years younger than you are, to come on board a character you've been reading for a very long time, since their grandparents were teenagers, and then write that character completely wrong, write that character completely out of character. That's very frustrating. Because, it's not like it's an alternate comic with a different name that's obviously an homage. If somebody comes on to Aquaman or Wonder Woman and starts writing that character completely wrong, it's still Aquaman, it's still Wonder Woman. It's just you can't object, because comics don't have letter pages anymore. Instead, you have to just leave. You have to give it up. You have to give up on that linchpin title and just hope for better days. Keep a vague eye on it and hope that down the line someone starts writing the character in character again. That's a terrible feeling. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen with DC Comics. It was the house ads in this issue that bothered me more than anything in the issue. So that was it. That was comics for this week. There was 2 big linchpin issues, standalone issues. There is no actual ongoing series of Drowned Earth. There is no actual ongoing series of Witching Hour. These are just standalone issues put out in one case to give them a big furtherance to the storyline, and in another case to end it, to conclude it. So those are the only things that appealed to me today in the comic shop were these 2 things. We'll see what next week holds, because I will be going back. I don't know if I'm going back to that shop. I might try the shop 1 block away and see if I'm physically able to talk to the help. That would be nice. That's always a nice start in a shop, if you're physically able to make yourself heard over the music in the store. That's great. That's a little baby step. We shall see. If I imagine the first thing I'll do is just go back to the same comic shop and see if maybe I just caught them on a bad day. I could have caught them on a bad day. But one way or another, we'll reconvene next Wednesday and you'll find out. So until then, I will go back to talking about books. Thank you, BookTube.